I think that Pilobolus really approaches, you mentioned something about like the transition into or something. And I think that I grew up in a really blue collar area. A lot of people, I worked in a steel factory and construction, and so I come from this blue collar approach, and I always had a curiosity for knowledge, and I wanted to find out what else was out there, and I really desired to be sort of like an intellectual type, and I think in a way I was even trying to act like somebody who I would have admired or something. Mostly because of they were different from me. You know, maybe they weren't. They grew up with money or something. I don't know. They had a fancy car. Um, but I think when I joined Pilobolus, I saw that the they Robbie Barnett, this founder that I quoted earlier, he said we have a blue collar approach to art making. He had the coolest office I've ever seen. Just like completely just stuff from decades of artists visiting, passing through, and mailing him stuff. Just everything posted on the wall around, like just a giant art collage of like this guy's life, including a bag of my hair because he wanted me to shave my head really bad when I joined. And I have red hair, and it's always been a defining character of me. And people have always said, "Oh, the redhead," like that's how people. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I shave my head. Like I used to shave it when I was a kid, but I don't know." And so long story short, he talked me into shaving my head. And so I went home one day and I did it at home, and I was going to come in, surprise him the next day. And I got there early, and I just put a bag of red hair in a Ziploc bag on his desk so that he knew that when he arrived at the studio, I would have shaved my head. But I didn't expect him to just take a thumbtack and like just this Ziploc bag of ginger hair just stayed on his wall for the entire, like a decade later. It was just like there, like perfectly preserved. The point was, I'm sorry I went off on a tangent, but I had to give you a little bit of a scope of like the bird's nests and the wasp nests and like skulls and things that were like all over this guy's walls, like just like an art experience going in there. But he had a quote on the wall, and it said, I don't have time for inspiration, I just get to work. And that was kind of the approach of Pilobolus. They're like, we're just going to start making stuff, and then eventually something cool will pop up, or maybe it won't, but then we'll just keep making stuff, and like eventually down the line something will happen. And it's just a very blue collar way of approaching art. You don't like have a glorious plan and all of this stuff. You get some people together who you think are interesting producers, interesting makers, interesting thinkers, and you start working, and the ideas that come out you assess, and then you continue, and you just get to work. And I think I'm that's one of the big things that has really benefited me from having this experience with Pilobolus, is just the very sort of rudimentary and effective approach to art making. And I think it's like as successful as the success rate is not perfect, but it's as successful as any other method that I've tried, and really has allowed me to connect with this world that I come from, that is like the working class, and they just work all the time. That's what they do. And so it's allowed me to embrace that and employ it in my other ventures.